Judith Collins.
Mr Speaker, the Honourable Annette King, who's just resumed her seat, has bravely asked, what is leadership? Well, she might well ask that of herself. And she then regaled us with a lecture on moral leadership. Well, frankly, I'm not going to take that from a key member of a Labour government, which would have to have been the most morally bankrupt we've ever seen, certainly in my lifetime. A government that gave us the Electoral Finance Act, which was all about shutting down opposition. A government that bent and weaved and twisted. And I sat through question time after question time under the previous government when David Cunliffe twisted and weaved when questions were very decisively and succinctly asked of him regarding Taito Phillip Field. I remember those, and I remember Helen Clark's many excuses as Prime Minister. People were just helping others. Yes, right. And she's asked very clearly a question regarding Phil Goff's leadership, because that's really what she's asking. She's really asking the Labour Party to say, can't we stand by our leader Phil Goff? She's asked questions about how can a leader have one view today and another view and the next day. Well, let's just ask about that. Phil Goff flip-flopped on supporting trading holiday leave for cash. This is what he said on the 20th of July this year, quote, I don't have huge objections to that, end quote. And yet, a few weeks later on The Nation on the 14th of August, quote, we wouldn't make it tradable, end quote. Now, that's a complete and utter flip-flop. So well might the Honourable Annette King ask about leadership, as are the 17 members of the Labour Party, which the Honourable Chris Carter will no doubt be wanting to share that detail with us. By the way, where is he? Where is Chris Carter? And I think it's important that he come turn back.
The member should not be referring to the absence of another.
No, thank you, Mr Speaker. You're quite right, absolutely. Well, it's very interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing more of the Honourable Chris Carter and the 17. Well, who's leaving already? Well, we already know that Helen Clark's left, Michael Cullen's left, and we know Chris Carter's shifted. We know that the Honourable Winnie Laban, she's left, and that the Honourable George Hawkins will be going, as is Lynn Pillay and the Honourable Pete Hodgson. So who's going to be left? Who's part of the 17? Well, Sue Moroney is definitely part of the 17. Brendan Burns, he'll want to be part of the 17 because they actually want to know what it's like to be in government. Well, under Phil Goff, there's going to be a long wait ahead. In the meantime, while they are meeting behind closed doors, talking about leadership and actually stabbing each other in the back, we're just getting on this side of the House with getting on with governing the country. I've heard the Labour Party give us lectures about the price of food. Well, let's have a look at that. In the last 2 years of the Labour government, food overall went up 15%. That's in the last 2 years. 15%. 15%, Mr Williamson. In the last 2 years of the National-led government, food went up 5%. Well, isn't that amazing? A third of it. And yet, do we ever hear that from Labour Party? Let's look at these good, what's it, honest food. Under Labour, the last 2 years, vegetables went up 21%. But under the last 2 years of the National-led government, they've gone down 6%. Not a peep out of the Labour Party. Let's look at another good food, fresh milk, up 23% in the last 2 years of the Labour government. Oh, and up only 7% under National. Or eggs. Eggs, that's a good food, isn't it? 19% increase under Labour, 6% decrease under National. Oh, yes, and cheese, I remember lectures on cheese from them. 50%, that's 50%, 50% increase under Labour and -3 under National. Well, for goodness sake, National is definitely the party of the people, unlike the Labour Party, the party of the elite. And while the Labour Party ticky-to-it around the country and the taxpayers' back, of course, talking about Labour's axe to tax starts, you'll remember that, won't you, Ms Wynne? You do, you remember that, Mr Ockenvold. Only for Mr Goff to decide that he was not going to axe the tax after all. Well, I wish he had told the taxpayer they could have saved the petrol. And then we had Mr Mallard talking about a very silly bill to take GST off healthy food, saying, quote, just imagine trying to define that and how much each of us will be allowed each hour, day, week before GST ticks in, and the army of inspectors to check the food, and the increase in GST. Blah, blah, blah. That was the 22nd of April this year. And now we've got Labour saying, Mr Goff in particular, that he's going to remove the tax off food, whatever that might be. Well, that's typical leadership for the Labor Party.